I'm going to continue on with part 2, FDA contracts, and this will be subpart B. And this is also in the FDA final rule. They refer you to this particular document. And this is the Federal Register, volume 76, number 165, Thursday, August 25th, 2011, Rules and Regulations. Department of Health and Human Services, 42 CFR Part 50, 45, CFR Part 94, and that is the code of the Federal Register. Docket number NIH-2010-0001, RIN 0925-AA53. Responsibility of applicants for promoting objectivity in research for which public health service funding is sought, and responsible prospective contractors. Agency, Department of Health and Human Services, Action, Final Rule. There's only one little part that I want to read in here. I'll get down to it. So, let me see here. 1 second. Almost there, and it'll be it's not really a page, it's a section, so it'll be 53284. 53284 is what I'm reading from, which has to do with Subpart A that I was speaking about. And this is what it reads. A significant financial interest means a financial interest consisting of one or more of the following interests of the investigator and those of the investigator's spouse and dependent kids that reasonably appears to be related to the investigator's institutional responsibilities. With regard to any publicly traded entity, a significant, let me just make that a little bit bigger so I can read it better. With regard to any publicly traded entity, a significant financial interest exists if the value of any remuneration received from the entity in the 12 months preceding the disclosure and the value of any equity interest in the entity as of the date of disclosure when aggregated exceeds $5,000. For purposes of this definition, remuneration includes salary and any payment for services not otherwise identified as salary, that is, consulting fees, honoraria, that's HONORARIA, paid authorship. Equity interest includes any stock option, or other ownership interest as determined through reference to public prices or other reasonable measures of fair market value. With regard to any non-publicly traded entity, a significant financial interest exists if the value of any remuneration received from the entity in the 12 months preceding the disclosure when aggregated exceeds $5,000, or when the investigator or the investigator's spouse or dependent kids holds any equity interest, that is stock option, or other ownership interest, or intellectual property rights and interest, that is patents and copyrights, upon receipt of income related to such rights and interests. Investigators also must disclose the occurrence of any reimbursed or sponsored travel, that which is paid on behalf of the investigator and not reimbursed to the investigator, so that the exact monetary value may not be readily available related to their institutional responsibilities. Provided, however, that this disclosure requirement does not apply to travel that is reimbursed or sponsored by a federal, state, or local government agency, an institution of higher education as defined at 20 United States Code 1001A, an academic teaching hospital, a medical center, or research institute that is affiliated with an institution of higher education. The institution FCOI policy will specify the details of the disclosure, which will include at a minimum the purpose of the trip, the identity of the sponsor organizer, the destination, and the duration. In accordance with the institution FCOI policy, the institutional officials will determine if further information is needed, including a determination or disclosure of monetary value in order to determine whether the travel constitutes an FCOI with the Public Health Service funded research. Just a little bit more here. The term significant financial interest does not include the following types of financial interests: salary, royalties, or other remuneration paid by the institution to the investigator if the investigator is currently employed or otherwise appointed by the institution, including intellectual property rights assigned to the institution, agreements to share in royalties related to such rights, any ownership interest in the institution held by the investigator if the institution is commercial or for-profit organization, income from investment vehicles such as mutual funds and retirement accounts, as long as the investigator does not directly control the investment decisions made in these vehicles, income from seminars, lectures, or teaching engagements sponsored by a federal, state, or local government agency and institution of higher education as defined at 20 United States Code 1001A, an academic teaching hospital, a medical center, a research institute that is affiliated with an institution of higher education, or income from service on advisory committees or review panels for federal, state, or local government agency and institution of higher education as defined at 20 United States Code 1001A, an academic teaching hospital, a medical center, a research institute that is affiliated with an institution of higher education. Whew. So what's going on here is pretty much what I had read in the other subpart A, and that is when they have research projects, like when the FDA, via the FDA final rule, they will have research projects, and these research labs or institutions are permitted to make a certain amount of money in profits. It could be stock options, it could be consulting fees, paid authorship, it could be stock itself, it could be any kind of equity interest or anything. They have to report that through the FDA, and it has to clear through the FDA to make sure there's no conflict of interest. But nevertheless, these research labs and institutions or higher education institutions can profit from anything. Like for instance, this Kapoor 60-watt mini. If someone submits a PMTA for this or a substantial equivalence application for this particular product, then one of these institutions will actually get this product and they will actually test it out. Make sure that all the paperwork in the application is correct, and these institutions actually can profit from that research. So I just wanted to point out the fact that there's a lot of monetary value as well that the FDA through contracts that the FDA contracts with these particular institutions, and these institutions can actually profit off of these particular research projects. So I just wanted to point that out to you. So the next thing I'm going to go to is the FDA salaries double in the year 2011-2013. And the reason why I want to point this out, and it's a very simple one actually, it's very not much to read, is during 2011, this is about the time when, if you remember in the other part that I was reading as far as the stakeholder letter in regards to this Sottera, that's Sottera case with Enjoy, after that, the court stated that that the FDA can regulate tobacco products. So therefore, the Tobacco Control Act of 2009 came about, and it gave the regulatory powers to the FDA so they could regulate tobacco, right? And if you watch that period of time between the stakeholder letter, which was, I believe, let me make sure I have that right real quick. Just look at that real quick. So I got the dates right. Yeah. So the stakeholder letter in regards to the FDA deciding to go after the e-cigarette industry was on April 25th, 2011, if you remember when I spoke about that letter. And in 2011, the monies under the Tobacco Control Act program actually doubled from 2011 to 2013. It literally doubled and I'm going to read it from here. This what it says. It's and this also is spoke of also in the FDA final rule. The following table displays funding and full-time equivalent staffing levels for fiscal year 2011 through fiscal year 2013. And it's called the FDA Program Resources Table. And the dollars are in thousands. So in the fiscal year 2011, the program level was at $421,463. And then in the year of 2012, it went to $450,751. And then 2013, it went to $482,398. And all the amounts that they quote here continue to go up per year. And because what they were doing is they were starting to regulate e-cigarettes even back in 2011. They started to have a strategy to go after the e-cigarette industry. And they were just starting to get into that process in 2011. And then finally in April of 2014, that's when they came down with the proposed deeming regulations, or the proposed deeming rule. And then what they were doing is they were so I don't want to read too much here. It's really 1 second. Oh, anyway, as you can see, the prices started to go up. Not that the prices didn't go up before in the previous years, but they continue to go up and up and up from 2011 as well. So I just wanted to point it out that what they were doing was when they started to go after the e-cigarette market, their prices increased over a period. From 2011, the prices kept on going up instead of going down, and that's because they were starting to include the e-cigarette market as well. So they were dispersing more money to research labs or to companies or whatever have you, to investigators or whatever have you within the FDA. And this is also quoted in the FDA final rule, and it's called Procedures for Monitoring Federal Outlays. Now, it's pretty long. It's 18 pages long. I'm not going to read it all, but I just want to give you a basic summary of the table of contents. And this is section 135, Procedures for Monitoring Federal Outlays. Table of contents. What is the purpose of these procedures? Who is required to submit a plan? What are the general reporting requirements? What are the reporting requirements for large transactions? What are the requirements for investment account reporting? What are the requirements for credit financing account reporting? What are the requirements for asset sale reporting? What are the responsibilities of OMB and the Treasury Department? When do I submit reports? And then reports on outlays, agency and program coverage, reports on outlays, initial report, large transactions, reporting format, investment account, reporting format, financing account, reporting format, asset sales, reporting format. And I'm just going to read just a couple paragraphs here. I'm not going to get too much into it. And I'm just going to read 135.1. What is the purpose of these procedures? Cabinet departments and certain agencies submit reports on federal outlays to assist in monitoring spending and to improve Treasury Department forecasts of the government's daily cash operating balances, borrowing requirements, and debt subject to legal limits, including trust and special fund investment activity. Realistic estimates, particularly for the immediate 6-month period, enable Treasury to borrow only amounts needed to finance government activities, thus reducing interest costs and overall cash balances maintained in the Treasury. Okay, so it shows that what's going on here is you have the Treasury, which of course disperses all these funds via the OMB, which is the Office of Management and Budget, and which is right. The OMB is right underneath the president. Actually, you have the OMB, and then you have the Office of Internal Regulatory Affairs, and then you have the president. That's what it looks as far as the hierarchy is concerned. And as I was talking about interest, like they were talking about in here, asset sale, credit financing, investment accounts, large transactions, all this plays into everything that I've read about so far in Subpart A and Subpart B. Okay, so the Treasury disperses these funds throughout the year as well. Now, the next one I'm going to go to is called Stakeholder Meeting. And this is also referred out of the FDA final rule as well. This is a Stakeholder Meeting on Reauthorization, September 29th, FDA, White Oak Campus, Silver Spring, Maryland. Purpose to discuss FDA's regulatory oversight and recent efforts in direct-to-consumer advertising, a status update of the Reagan-Udall Foundation, FDA's proposals for enhancements and stakeholder proposals. And then they list the participants of the FDA. Then they list the HHS, which is Health and Human Services, and then they have these stakeholders. Now, this is just a short list of the stakeholders that are involved when it comes to the FDA. And I'm just going to read them. Not that I'm sure some of them will play into the e-cigarette industry as well as the PMTA and the SE or the pre-market SE process gets underway, or even the certification process as well, or let alone a vape shop that has to register all their product listings. And these particular foundations and associations actually play a huge role in how things are done at the FDA. And these are the stakeholders. Okay, so you have Alzheimer's Association, Friends of Cancer Research, National Women's Health Network, Alliance for Aging Research, American Pharmacists Association, National Consumers League, National Research Center for Women and Families, Academy of Managed Care Pharmacy, National Health Council, HCM Strategists, National Multiple Sclerosis Society, Faster Cures, the Center for Accelerating Medical Solutions, American Society of Health System Pharmacists, Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, National Health Council, the ALS Association, Union of Concerned Scientists, Consumers Union, StopAFIB.org, Consumer Federation of America, Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, Coalition for Healthcare Communication, American Society of Health System Pharmacists, American Pharmacists Association, National Association of Chain Drug Stores, Society for Women's Health Research, Epilepsy Foundation, Leukemia Lymphoma, that's LYMPHOMA Society, Men's Health Network, Children's Cause for Cancer Advocacy, Parkinson's Action Network, National Alliance on Mental Illness, National Patient Advocate Foundation, Alliance for Regenerative Medicine Union, it's like the Union of Concerned Citizens. So you have all, and then it goes and explains what these are all about. And these are just a partial list, dependent upon the subject matter that the FDA is dealing with. Like the American Lung Association, the American Cancer Society, the American Medical Association will definitely be on the list when it comes to the e-cigarette industry. But all these particular foundations and organizations and associations and networks and unions and advocacy groups and all these particular organizations actually play a huge role into how the FDA will process the PMTA, the SE, the pre-market SE, as well as certification applications, as well as register any product listings of vape that's in a vape shop, and they will have a lot to say in it through their advocacy, through their own letters to the FDA, or even face-to-face meetings or whatever have you. I just want to give an overall of who and what is participating in this entire process, and as you can see, it's a huge process. It's not just the FDA. It's just a huge, huge process. And the last thing here on Subpart B is called capital assets. And this is also referred from the FDA final rule. And this is guidance on Exhibit 300, planning, budgeting, acquisition, and management of its capital assets. I'm not going to get too much into this, but I just want to read the table of contents and what is the purpose of the section. What is the purpose of this section? Does the Exhibit 300 apply to me? What background information must I know? What special terms should I know? How will agencies manage capital assets? What other requirements does Exhibit 300 fulfill? What must I report on Exhibit 300A and B, and when? How will OMB use Exhibit 300A and B? Exhibit 300A and B, IT, Capital Asset Summary, and Performance Measurement Report. And then 300.1 states, what is the purpose of this section? Exhibits 300's established policy for planning, budgeting, acquisition, and management of major information technology capital investments. The Office of Management and Budget, that is OMB, provides procedural and analytical guidelines for implementing specific aspects of these policies described in OMB circulars and their associated appendices. And then it goes into many other things. I'll just read it. What the heck? Exhibit 300s are companions to an agency's Exhibit 53. Exhibit 300s and the Exhibit 53, together with the agency's Enterprise Architecture Program, define how to manage the IT capital planning and control process. Exhibit 53A is a tool for reporting the funding of the portfolio of all IT investments within a department, while Exhibit 300A is a tool for detailed justifications of major IT investments. Exhibit 300B is for the management of the execution of those investments through their project life cycle and into their useful life in production. By integrating the disciplines of architecture, investment management, and project implementation, these programs provide the foundation for sound IT management practices, end-to-end governance of IT capital assets, and the alignment of IT investments with an agency's strategic goals. As architecture-driven IT investments are funded in the invest phase, they move forward into the implementation phase, where system development lifecycle processes are followed in actual versus planned outputs, schedule, and operational performance expenditures are tracking utilizing performance-based management processes. New for the fiscal year 2013 budget process, Exhibit 300B requires agencies to provide more detailed benchmarks for the management and performance of projects and operational assets associated with a major investment. And that pretty much sums it all up, because like I said before, you take this device, you submit the paperwork, all the paperwork that the FDA request, which I will speak to when I speak about the FDA final rule. And then they analyze this entire device, this Kapor Mini 60 watt. They analyze it, they test it, and see if it matches up with the application, either the PMTA or the SE or the pre-market SC, the certification, and they see if it matches up and see if it's a safe product to put on the market and things of that nature. Is it good for public health and things of that nature? And like it says here, and that line really sums up this whole part 2, and that is requires agencies to provide more detailed benchmarks for the management and performance of projects and operational assets associated with a major investment. So they take all that paperwork that you give to the FDA will take all that paperwork and give it to these research labs, organizations, associations, whatever have you, and they will conduct the analysis of the paperwork that was submitted to the FDA. And in turn, they make an investment. They make actually a major investment. They can make a profit off of all the lab tests, all the analysis of the toxicology and everything. And because they have to verify all of the FDA applications to the FDA, they have to verify and make sure that they're legitimate. And it's not the FDA that does that. Actually, they actually contract out to different companies or associations, to organizations, institutions, whatever have you, in order to do those types of projects, in order to investigate those certain projects or figure out, is it beneficial to the marketplace? Is it beneficial for public health, by going through all kinds of analysis and tests and everything else? And in turn, of course, they make a profit out of it. And that is the end of part 2. You guys have a good one.